Hey everybody, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Today I am taking out my sweet potato cuttings, the slips that I made a couple weeks ago, and we're going to put them in a raised bed. I'll go through that little process with you first, and then later on I'm going to plant some basil seed because I am way behind on my garden this year with the basil seed. I planted some in a raised bed, but it has not germinated, so I need to get some more going. So anyway, let's get started. So as you can see here, my sweet potato slips have done really well. Basically, after I took them off the potato itself, I put them under lights in the garage and kept them growing for a little bit longer so they could grow a little bit more extensive root systems. And now they're ready to go ahead and plant out. And I'm going to plant as much of these as I can. If you see all that area there, I'm going to plant all the way down. I might even bury them a little bit deeper down to that point, so I just leave a small portion of the slip up above the ground. The more roots we have in the ground, of course, the more potatoes we'll probably get. We'll just have to see, and let's see what harvest day is going to be later on in the year. So let's get started on this. First thing, we're going to come over here to the raised bed. I built this raised bed last year out of just some scrap material that we had around. You can see it's pretty worn looking. It's just some old stuff. Got a few rogue strawberry plants that have grown up. We got a couple strawberries out of them, but not a whole lot. I'm just going to leave them in here in case they produce some runners. I can transplant those and move them later. But right here, well, I've already gone through and I've kind of weeded out what I needed to weed out. We had some Bermuda grass creeping in, so that's never a good thing. We also had bindweed coming in here, which bindweed is awful. It is actually a member of the sweet potato family too, except it will wrap and completely encase plants with its foliage, and it's just really an obnoxious plant to have around. So for the next step, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate some bone meal into the soil here. Notice the nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium percentages there. Okay, that's really important for good root growth to have a good phosphorus amount in there. So, and the calcium helps with other plants too, things that have issues with blossom end rot and different kinds of things. Calcium helps to form cell walls, so it really encourages a healthy plant. Alright, I am just going to kind of sprinkle the bone meal throughout the bed here to get a nice kind of even coverage. Once I've done that, I'm going to work it in with my hands, just through that top layer of soil. It's going to get watered in after we plant the potatoes in here, and should mix in pretty well. So we'll just kind of scrape the surface of the soil. If you happen to see any old roots in here, we'll pull them out. Some weeds. This is bindweed right there, which if you can recognize them when they're early, you can get them out pretty quickly before they start taking over. Of course, that one's probably going to come back because I don't think I got all the root off of it. So once I've done that, I'm going to create some trenches. I don't know exactly how many cuttings I've got in there, but I want to create trenches where I can go ahead and put those in, and then I'll just backfill the trenches. And so for that, I'm just going to take a hoe, and we're going to create those trenches. We'll probably do 3 of them here in this raised bed, and we're just going to try to stick with this one side of the raised bed at the moment. I've got some others that I'll put over on the other side of the bed another time. Good loose soil is really important for growing many types of plants, including sweet potatoes. This particular soil here was built over the last couple of years using wood chips, grass clippings, composted leaves, just whatever I could get a hold of that was organic. I have not bought soil in a couple of years. I just kind of try to use what I have here first, and I'm going to get to a point here where I'm going to have to add some inputs from off-site and add them into the garden. Okay, so now it's time for these sweet potato cuttings and see what we actually have to put in the garden. So you can see they've got some really nice roots that have formed. We're going to just gently separate them out and see how many we have first, and then we'll space them out evenly according to that. Some didn't do as well as others, but they still got roots on them and still have a lot of potential to grow throughout the season. So we'll go ahead and include them in our planting today. We've got quite a few slips. This was all from one potato, and that potato is actually still inside my house right now, growing more slips. I don't know if I'll need them or not, but you can never have too many. It's easier to get rid of them than to not, right? So here we go. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we'll count that, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we get about 17 sweet potato plants out of one sweet potato. And that sweet potato, of course, came from one that I grew last year in one of these beds out here in the garden. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this sweet potato and I'm going to space them out relatively evenly in these beds. And remember, the more you can put under the soil surface, the better off your sweet potatoes are going to be. Nothing wrong with turning them on the side. So if you lay them that way, you can do that just fine. They'll grow more roots along the edge. Once you've done all this, next step is just backfill, and that's pretty easy. Just cover those roots as much as you can. You have to reset some things a little bit here and there. As you're moving things around, you'll knock one thing over and another thing has to be fixed. That's just typical. This is some pretty good soil. There's one I missed. Can't have that. And this one didn't get deep enough because it's got more roots standing up. So I'm going to bury it sideways, cover it up. There we go. And these are going to grow into a large mass of sweet potatoes. This whole bed's going to get covered in foliage, and that's a good thing. We'll see how it grows, and then in end of summer, fall, we'll start harvesting stuff. You probably want to get them harvested before the last frost, or the first frost rather, not the last frost. Harvest them before that first frost, so that way you don't have any dieback from them. So for that, you just kind of keep an eye on your weather and get out there before it happens. But sweet potatoes are extremely easy. They're really nutritious. They're one of our favorite foods. It's almost like eating candy at your dinner table. And these were really good last year. And just to note, they came from grocery store bought sweet potatoes initially. And of course, the last step in planting any plants in your vegetable garden or your flower gardens, wherever, is to give them a good soaking with the hose. Of course, if you got rainwater, that's probably even better, but this will work. But you give them a really good amount of water to start off with. Make sure that they've got plenty to get a good start on creating some roots and sweet potatoes down the road. I got this particular wand the other day, which I'm really happy with because it definitely helps your back where you're not having to bend over and water your plants all the time. So I definitely recommend getting one of these for your garden. So sweet potatoes are just an easy plant to grow in your garden. You really should. I've got them planted next door here to a penstemon. That's a perennial plant that hopefully will attract some pollinators and things. And there's also some cosmos at the end of this bed that has just started to germinate and grow for this year. It was pretty. It brought a lot of bees and butterflies to the garden bed areas, which is great for the other plants. And plus, sometimes when you have those pollinators come in that have the like wasps and bees that have that buzzing sound, they scare off other insects that like to eat your leaves and your foliage. So just a quick tip there, interplant as much as you can in your vegetable garden and adding some flowers and stuff like that. And now it's time to plant out some basil seed. This here is a Genovese basil. It is typically used by us, at least, for making nice pestos. We love doing that kind of a dish. Pesto and pasta with chicken, something like that would be a favorite. The Genovese basil is a very common basil. It's kind of the typical Italian basil, and it grows really easily from seed. I don't usually recommend people go out and buy it from a pot because you just don't really need to. You can buy a huge amount of seed really cheap and make a lot of basil on your own. So, and this is pretty simple to do. You don't cover the seeds, you just kind of sprinkle it in the planter and then cover it with something until it starts to germinate. It should germinate in 7 to 10 days or so. It may take a little bit longer than that. This is seed from 2015 from Baker Creek, which I've had some bad experiences this year with this year because I've got some really old seed and I'm hoping these will germinate. My peppers did terrible from 2015 this year, but basil has a little bit different of a viability, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so here's what basil seed looks like. Small little black seeds, and we are just going to sprinkle them fairly evenly across this, just like that. I've already pre-wet this entire flat, so it is ready to go. I just have to sprinkle the seed, and I may put a little bit more water on top of this just to make sure that the seeds get fully covered with water, and then I'm going to cover it with a clear plastic top and then put it out in the vegetable garden somewhere with a little bit of a cover on top of it, like a rock or something, to keep that lid on until it's germinated. In the bottom of this flat, these are 10-20 flats. The top one has holes in it, the bottom one does not have holes in it. So as soon as I've got germination, I can remove the top one from down here and then just water normally when I'm watering the rest of the plants in the garden. So here I've got that flat in a spot that gets a little bit of dappled shade. Now granted, it's kind of artificial because I've got this little plant right here that's helping to cover it and a couple of other plants in pots that are helping to cover it, and I've got it held down with a rock. And I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to check it every couple days and take a look. Hopefully it doesn't get too hot here. If it does, I'll move it to a shadier location. I want it to get some light, but not so much that it's going to burn through here. So dappled light is the ideal scenario. We'll see how that goes. Guys, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and follow along this year as I do more garden stuff. Today, I hope that was helpful for you to see how I planted my sweet potatoes. It's pretty much the same thing I did last year, and I had a lot of success doing it that way. And with the basil, we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping that the seed is still viable and I can still get some nice basil plants out of it this year. And basil is an excellent one to plant with your tomatoes, your peppers, or your potatoes because it kind of disguises them. When you companion plant with a basil plant, you kind of effectively ward off some of those other insects because they can't find what they're looking for to eat. It masks the smell. It's also good to help prevent deer damage, which I am starting to see a little bit. A deer snuck in my garden yesterday and ate some sweet potato plants, so we'll see. But anyway, I'm Dave from Growing the Home Garden. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching.